This video is brought to you by people who like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You can also support my work by buying me a coffee. The Fellowship of Guelphissauga continues, with the mayor hunting for student housing and the biggest tool in town. Thanks to the fat cats in the university's ivory tower, the mayor had a population problem on his hands. He had to find places to house the thousands of extra students that the fat cats over-enrolled this fall. They didn't care that it might ruin the view from both the mayor's and their office windows, since they planned to retire before the university goes broke. Meanwhile, by the tent encampments downtown, Lloyd of the Longfields also planned out his retirement. He wanted to retire in glory while keeping his title of biggest tool in town. Can Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves do anything about the housing cost crisis? And will the mayor reclaim his title of biggest tool in town? In the mayor's office downtown, he plugged in his Game Boy and loaded up his game of European-inspired SimCity. He had to replace the batteries with the housing cost crisis overheating his Game Boy. The mayor was frantically pushing buttons as his original plan to make life a little less expensive in the Shire had gone out the window. He had flexed his strong mayor powers to cut next year's residential tax increase from 10% to 4% in hopes of making the housing cost crisis a little less worse. But thanks to the fat cats in the university's ivory tower, the mayor had an extra population problem, ruining his plans. In the south end of the Shire, the fat cats at the university flexed their population powers against the mayor's strong powers. They're slowly waking up to their multi-year million-dollar deficits and can see themselves going broke on the horizon. Since 2018, they were relying on operating reserves to cover those deficits, but that safety net was almost gone. In a frantic push to increase revenues, they over-enrolled up to 7,000 new first-year students this year to cover their $12 million deficit. With declining international student enrollment and tuition, we are severely constrained in our ability to generate revenue to offset increasing costs, their finance committee reported. But that didn't bother the fat cats in the ivory tower, especially their provost and vice president academic, Gwen of Chapman, who plans to retire in glory at the end of next month. Both the mayor and the people of the Shire were pissed off by the university's population power move. Their over-enrollment is going to worsen the Shire's housing cost crisis, with their extra population pressure jacking up the cost of living here. People accuse the fat cats of just profiting off the over-demand for student housing and food on campus. The 1,200 students on their residence waiting list were giving up hope and starting to look elsewhere for a place to live. Some of them accused the university of getting greedy and decided to go to Western instead. The university staff also complained about the extra work going to be dumped on them this fall, with 50% more students in their classes. The mayor pushed back against the university's population power move. He was trying to make the housing cost crisis a little less worse, but there was nowhere to house the 1,200 extra students waiting for residence. He didn't want them setting up camp downtown and ruining the view from his office window, so the mayor looked to the homeless student hotels for help. he pushed to table a proposal to expand the Alma Student Hotel at the corner of Stone Road in Scottsdale, adding around 500 units. If approved, this would cover less than half of the 1,200 students waiting for a place to live, so the mayor continued his hunt. He also proposed converting parks into tent cities to fill the gap for the hundreds of new students still left on the streets this fall. Meanwhile, down the street from the tent encampment downtown, the mayor had to flex his strong mayor powers at another event. In a yearly tradition, Lloyd of the Longfields, the mayor, and Mike of the Shriners competed for the title of biggest tool in town. Last year, the mayor sacrificed this title to Longfields to gain his strong mayor powers, and this year was no exception. While Mike of the Shriners got distracted by climate change, Lloyd of the Longfields was the fastest at fixing a bike tire and kept his title of biggest tool in town. He could easily fix a bike tire with a couple of minutes of work, but he couldn't fix the Shire's housing cost crisis with years to do it. But that didn't matter to Lloyd, since just like the university's Fat Cats, he plans to retire in glory as the biggest tool in town. Can Carly of Klassen and the Elder Elves do anything about the housing cost crisis? And is Lloyd of the Longfields the biggest tool in town? Stay tuned here to see. This video is brought to you by people who like, share, and subscribe to this channel. You can also support my work by buying me a coffee.